What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from MikeTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic. And today, I'm going to tackle a Marvel movie. It's a Sony Marvel movie, so you know it's going to be great. This is Kraven the Hunter, because everyone gets their own movies now. That's how the world works. Anyway, this is actually directed by J.C. Jander, who I was surprised was diving into this, but it made me a little bit more hopeful going into Kraven despite the sort of disastrous box office and reviews for the movie. Because as far as competency, he has a high level of competency going into his films. He's the director of Margin Call and All Is Lost, two films that are both solid films that got really good performances out of their cast, so he knows how to do that. He's proven himself in that field, and I was interested to see what he would do. I think, earlier in the year, Chris Stuckman made the big thing about Madam Web. That was his hill that he was going to die on, was defending the director of Madam Web and talking about studio interference. This would probably be the film to do that with, because you actually have an established director who's made previous films that we can look at and go, those were good movies. What's up? Like, you can actually talk about the possibility of there being studio interference on Kraven the Hunter and what went wrong. Part of it is that I think too many hands touch the script, and I think too many people end up writing a movie. Instead of just one person, instead of just going with the bold vision of a singular entity like J.C. Chandor, you end up having a script that bounces around from person to person and the ideas get muddled. Not everybody has the same drive to push the same themes through. Either way, this film has audio description, so if you want to watch it, you can. I actually did not hate this movie. It's messy, for sure. Like, I'm not gonna argue that at all. But of Sony's non-Spider-Man universe, I would put this about on par with Venom, which would be maybe a little bit under it. Honestly, I'm a weirdo. Venom: Let There Be Carnage is my favorite movie. I thought it was the most fun any of these films has ever had. Actually had a villain that was memorable. I mean, Carnage is inherently memorable as a villain. And Woody Harrelson playing him, I thought was an interesting choice. So, and Venom also started to be a little bit more like Venom. It felt a little bit more like we were growing into it. So that is, to me, of these movies, these downstream Sony movies, the best one, followed by Venom, and then followed by Kraven the Hunter. So, yeah, I mean, it's above Morbius and Madam Web, so there's something, but Aaron Taylor Johnson does not know what to do with his accent. He doesn't know if it's supposed to be profoundly Russian, sort of Russian. He doesn't know really where he's supposed to go with it, so it's just kind of fake. Just one of the things. And I would have loved a cartoonishly, you know what I'm saying, like sinisterish, just almost like what we're getting from Red Guardian on in the Marvel movies, where it's just like, that's so over the top, you know. It's what David Harbour is doing is just, that's kind of what I wanted. Russell Crowe leans into it a lot more here. I guess he's going to play Zeus and Kraven's father. We don't even think about things anymore. We're just like, and Aaron Taylor Johnson is Quicksilver and Kraven. Like, apparently we've run out of actors, so now people are having to play multiple characters in the greater Marvel cinematic universe. So, I don't know, man. It's sort of an origin story. He has a brother. They start out as little kids. some stuff happens, and we also see at the same time there's an origin story for Calypso, who ends up being played by Ariana DeBose, but she ends up saving. He's rarely ever called Kraven. He's almost always called Alexei. I think he's Alexei. Either he's Alexei and his brother Sergey. I don't know. It's Kraven and Rhino. So they just don't use their names. uh, so she saves Kraven, brings him back to life. But his brother's also been affected in an interesting way. And his brother is Rhino. But his brother wants to be a musician. It's played by Fred Heschinger, who has had quite a year in 2024. A year that just kind of popped for him, where he ended up standing out in a lot of projects that he was in. Here, I don't think he stands out, although it's not like he doesn't stand out like a sore thumb the other direction either. He's just fine here. He doesn't own the movie. So what this movie needed was, it needed over the top acting. It needed people who were coming in with big personalities, and instead it got okay personalities. Like I needed like a, an Al Pacino in Scarface type of thing, say hello to my little friend. Like, it needed something. It's trying to be kind of a mafia movie. It's kind of an origin story. It's kind of a comic book movie. It's trying to kind of be a lot of things. So it is kind of those things. It's just never really any of them. Ariana works her way in here. I'm glad we really didn't go into like a love interest thing here, because her character is so tangentially connected to this. They're just like, hey, she's got like abilities and we should use them. Plus, this movie needs a female. So, what's up, Ariana? You've been in some shitty movies. Let's put you in another one. Poor girl, she won an Oscar, and she just keeps doing shit like, just some of the dumbest movies. God, 2024 was an awful year for her in film. just an awful. She have ISS, Argyle. What was that? It's that Amazon horror movie that I've already forgotten that they dropped in October, and this. I'm sure she's got something else, but she just had like an awful 2024. Just, good lord. I really hope this next thing that she's got going on is actually good. With Akei Kwan. Dying you, please. Anyway, this is not. It's okay. I mean, compared to like I said, compared to Madam Web and Morbius, I did like this a little bit more. But I would put it below the Venom films, so this lives somewhere in between. It's maybe a little bit long, pacing problems, but that's also because it never really knows what it is and never really fully commits to anything. I love the fact that they gave it an R rating. Like, they were fully okay with this being R, and I kind of wanted them to go into it more. It's like, okay, so you have the grace of an R rating, then treat it more like a mafia movie. Like, let's go hard on this. Let's bring it. Like, let's Deadpool this thing. It's not that hard of an R. In comparison. I mean, in comparison to what Deadpool is doing in most of his films and the level of violence that he's got in his movies, this is not much. This isn't Blade, like this is this is kind of just like, I mean, maybe close to some of the TVMA Netflix shows that were in the Marvel. Maybe some of that, I guess. It's not that hard, If I caught my kid watching Kraven the Hunter, I wouldn't be like, oh God, I have to make sure. I'd be like, I don't know, it'll be fine. So I'm not in it. This is not an enthusiastic endorsement by any means. I'm sure some people are going to be like, I can't believe you like this. I'm going to be like, I've seen worse movies in 2024. I just have. I mean, I've seen movies that viscerally anger me. I've seen movies made by talented directors who were given all of the latitude in the world and then came out looking like Rebel Moon. So And like these weird things where like supposedly he had to deliver why did he have to deliver a PG-13 cut? He didn't have to deliver a PG-13 cut. That's all bullshit. It's a streaming movie. The movie wasn't being made for theatrical box office. There's no upside to doing a PG-13 movie. Like he just wanted to have a Snyder cut of his own fucking movie. That is the only reason. Here, Sony at least let JC do his own thing, and like, yeah, if you want, if it's R, it's R. You know, I don't know. At this point, who cares? Maybe it'll do better. You know, and they didn't make him cut it back to PG-13. So, I think the movie's better for it. I'm not sure that they shot it thinking we're gonna get an R rating, and I kind of wish that they had. I kind of wish they had been thrown that bone and been like, yeah, it's gonna happen for you. Um, Russell Crowe's probably the most interesting thing here because he's overacting his ass off, which makes him inherently more interesting in this type of film because this film is struggling to find the right beats and the right balance. It can't decide if it wants to be campy. It can't decide if it wants to be a gritty mob drama. It can't decide if it wants to be a comic book superhero movie. It can't decide if it wants to be like a John Wick revenge thriller where Kraven is just inordinately really good at finding people. Like he's the best Hufflepuff that ever was. So I don't know. But I think JC was just. I'm sure that there's some stories. I'm sure he would never work with Sony again. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure that that's a thing. I'm sure people who are doing these movies are like, if you let me do my thing, for the love of everything that's holy, why did you bring me in on this? You know, like, just let me do my thing. But sometimes people's things still don't work. I don't think Netflix really stopped DJ Caruso from doing his thing on Mary, and that dude couldn't make a coherent Bible epic. So I don't know. It's just, you know, and even the director's cuts of Rebel Moon aren't great. I mean, they're better because he has to do less vocal exposition. But in the grand scheme of what Zack Snyder's been doing, like, don't insult yourself, man. There's better movies. So I don't know if this was ever going to be J.C. Chandler's best work because I think he was always saddled with a project that was always headed for mediocrity. So is Kraven mediocre? Yeah, it's mediocre. But in a world of films that are decidedly not, and we keep greenlighting things, I kind of think about the movies they haven't, the ones that didn't make it, and I'm like, how bad did those films have to be for Sony to reverse their decision on making those movies? You know? How, for the couple movies that they did reverse their ideas on, what did those films look like? Because if they're pushing forward Madam Web, Kraven, and Morbius, what did the other films look like? Were they written in crayon? Like, anyway. Yeah, so the audio description on this I thought was pretty good. Again, it's so hard to sit here and be like, okay, so this is like the reason we're here is because of Kraven the Hunter, and he's almost never called Kraven, and then in the audio description he's not referred to as Kraven. And it's like, what am I doing in a movie called Kraven the Hunter, where there is no Kraven in the audio description, and they say the name like, I don't know, a handful of times, like literally like 5 or less, a literal handful of times. I actually think they say Rhino more than Kraven. And then Rhino's never referred to as Rhino. They never pick up their names. They're just sort of like, their alter egos are just, whatever. You know? I don't know. I felt very unenthused. Even with the audio description. Audio description was approaching it like it was just a regular ass movie. And I'm like, this is not a regular ass comic book movie, man. They have alter egos. You know? Anyway. Luckily Calypso's name is Calypso, so they just made that real easy. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not gonna recommend this. I'm sort of torn because it's not good, but it's also not Morbius and Madam Web. But those movies weren't even the worst. Like Madam Web isn't even in my bottom 25 for the year. So I think Argyle made it though, if I remember correctly. So Ariana did make an appearance. Um, yeah, this is. I'm gonna give Kraven the Hunter. Uh, I I don't know. I'm gonna give it a C minus. That feels about right. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I'll see you guys on the other side.